Greetings, everybody. My name is Michael Lee, and I'm really excited to teach this course. I've been thinking about this course and teaching a course, a graduate level course on storytelling for many years. I started thinking specifically about the importance of stories, the stories we tell one another to function together as families, as individuals, as communities, as nations, the kinds of stories that inspire us to rally around a coherent vision, or the types of stories that really divide us and make us dislike our neighbors and communities who are we don't perceive to be a part of our own community. I started thinking about these during my graduate degree, roughly between 2002 and 2008. I came to the College of Charleston as soon as I finished a PhD at the University of Minnesota. Much of my writing and research has been in the area of strategic communication, specifically as it applies to the political world. So I wrote a book on the conservative right since 1945 up until the present that was published in 2014. I wrote another book just recently that's coming out actually next month about separatism and secession in some American communities. But the whole time, much of my research and teaching has been specifically about the study of storytelling, and this is the first opportunity that I've had to really devote an entire course to it, and I'm really looking forward to it. So the course, of course, is, pardon the pun, the course, of course, is entirely online, as almost all of your courses or all of your courses in this graduate degree are. And the way it works is this. We'll have 6 weekly schedules. This is part of course, the first schedule. That first schedule, as you'll see, like every schedule will include 3 different things. The first, it'll have a series of readings that you do. You should be expected to have roughly about 100 pages of reading per week in the course. Second, it will have a link to a lecture or two. This week's lecture is pretty lengthy in the sense that it covers a long time period, which I'm about to explain. Some other weeks we'll have smaller, more bite-sized lectures that could be 2 and could be 3. They could be focused on a story building skill or a specific storytelling concept. We're beginning at very broadly talking about the role of storytelling in human culture, human development, human brain development even, and human communication, but not all of our lectures will be like this. These kinds of videos will in fact reappear in subsequent lectures. What you'll find from my lectures is that they're a combination of text-based, some interaction, some videos, and then sometimes I'll pop in, just like this video, with a few words of wisdom or to explain a concept or apply that concept to a very specific assignment, like your upcoming assignments, your final exam or your final project, or something like that. So we have 6 weekly schedules. Each schedule will have 3 items on it, a reading that you'll do over that week, a lecture that you should take a look at over that week, and then finally, your writing assignment. Every writing assignment you have in the class, the small stakes ones, will happen over the course of the first 5 weeks or so. So starting with this writing assignment up until 5 weeks from now, excluding spring break, you can expect to have 1 writing assignment per week, and those are in the 800-word range or so. Now there's other 2 big assignments in the course. They're both backloaded, so it's something to think about when thinking about your semester or this half semester schedule. The first one is a final exam. I'm going to assess lots of your writing over the course of the semester in these weekly assignments, but also in your final project, which I'll discuss in just a second. But I also want to make sure that we get a sense to see how these concepts are landing with everybody and test everyone's memory and retention and ability to apply these concepts in a test-taking format. So at the end of the semester, we'll have a cumulative final exam. That exam will be largely multiple choice. I would also suggest starting to think about your final project now, if you can. If you have time to, you should look online. There is a full and thorough account of what our expectations are for your final project, which is called a competitive content audit assessment. Right? So essentially you're picking a brand and then situating that brand's particular brand story, both specifically within itself as well as within its competitor brands, and seeing opportunities for growth as well as opportunities to reinforce existing strengths with the brand story. There's a few different skill sets that I think are important to bring to mind as you think about succeeding in this course. 3 specifically. Number 1, stay consistent. Make sure to log in several times a week. Make sure to stay on top of your readings. They could be quite voluminous, 100 pages, give or take. Try not to do it all in one fell swoop on one day. Retention goes down the longer you spend time with it. If you can spend an hour with it or 2 hours with it Monday through Friday, rather than 6 hours with it on a Thursday or 7 hours with it on a Friday, you're much more likely to retain this information. Number 2, get started on your big projects, the final exam, and the competitive audit assessment early. And by early, I mean you can begin that this week, in fact. So As you're reading and as you're going through the lectures, keep in mind the fact that you'll be able to have notes with you on the final exam. The final exam is cumulative. The final exam will test your knowledge of lectures, but much of it will be based on your retention of the readings. And so as you're reading and as you're going through the lecture, pick out key concepts, key ideas, key people, key studies especially, and core ideas that these audiences and these authors focus on that you can write down so that you can kind of create a miniature study guide for yourself as you're going through the lectures and the readings. What will happen instead, if you have no note-taking ability or no note-taking that you've gone through all of the lectures and all the readings, is that you'll find yourself 6-7 weeks from now having to scramble back through lots and lots of pages, which will kind of be untenable. But if you have a series of bite-sized summary documents that really point you to the key people, the key studies, the key events, key concepts and vocabulary from each of these readings, you'll be in a much better position just to review your notes for the final exam as opposed to having to review everything that we've covered for the final exam. The same is true roughly for your competitive audit assessment, the final project. Everything you need to be successful, barring a few different concepts we're going to explain and try to apply on the final paper, on the final project, almost everything you need to be successful is already in front of you in terms of getting the research started, getting the structure started, and starting to lay the groundwork for the brand that you choose and how you're going to analyze the brand. You're going to be doing specific kinds of research about that brand's positioning in a very specific marketplace, and a lot of that research can be done right now. There is also a few different specific skill sets, SWOT analyses, white paper analyses, blue ocean analyses that I'm going to ask that you incorporate on those. And I've already explained those and hyperlinked some instructions that you can consider as you're going through the final project instructions. And then always feel free to reach out to me with any questions about that. So to today's lecture. Today's lecture is a big lecture that in fact begins roughly tens of thousands of years ago in the caves in France. And what we're going to try to do in today's lecture is explore, number one, how stories make us human, how we told stories that made us human, and how in turn stories can remake human culture in a sense that we've evolved to tell stories and that we have evolved because we started telling stories. So we're going to study the history of what we know about the archaeology and the anthropology of how we're all committed storytellers cross-culturally, across millennia even, and certainly across geography. And in the second part of the lecture, we're really going to cover what it takes to tell a compelling story and how specifically the human brain and specific areas in the brain have evolved to respond in very specific ways to effective stories.